Oh, if you scoot in a little bit, we can see your handsome face more.
All right. All right, we got 5 folks on. Hey, how's everybody doing? Happy Friday, everyone. I think this is going to be a really exciting little segment that we have going on here. We'll have Dave here in just a few more minutes. We'll have Dave introduce himself, but hope everybody's having a good Friday. You guys want to go ahead and throw up some comments. Let us know who's there, where you're coming from, and anything else you want to say. Salutations. Noah's here. That's really all that matters, right? Noah's here today. Summer's here. We have to get a bigger screen. I have to move the camera way back.
You're stealing all the real estate, man.
No. Trying to get littler. Let's see. Where's our comments? What's going on, Willie? How you doing? Willie's here. Who else we got out there? We got 11, 12, 13.
Willie recently moved out of Maryland.
Willie, did you move out of Maryland?
And into West Virginia to get some of that freedom.
Jamie, hey, what's going on, man? Good to have you back. Ed, nice to see you. Yep. Noah is here. He's are you talking about Summer or Noah? I think they're fighting for who the boss is.
I don't have to fight.
Too easy. The fam is all here. That's right. Tyler, great to have you on here. Let's see. Yeah, I was see. Robert, how you doing, buddy? Oh man, coming from upstate New York. You're committing a felony just even tuning in, I think, Robert. Let's see. Oh, you guys moved down to West Virginia, huh, Willie? Where are you at exactly? You don't have to say it here if you don't want to.
You might not want everybody to know where he's at.
We need an address and need your social, credit card number, and the last 3 digits
on the screen.
On the back there.
The mother's maiden name.
Yes.
100%. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, I want to tell everybody thanks for coming out. Thanks for tuning in. I'm actually really enjoying these. We're going to continue to do more of these and continue to develop our capabilities and just get better at it overall, right? So, but these have been fun. I appreciate you guys. Last week we had a lot of technical issues. It was the first time that we had somebody on. I don't know if that definitely contributed to it. So we worked through some issues, and we appreciate everybody hanging in there. So I want to introduce Dave. So first of all, I met Dave at the Great American Outdoor Show. He was a few booths down, and just long story short, we talked about some business and things like that. But more importantly, Dave's one of those guys I definitely consider a friend. We don't get to hang out that much, but our interests are aligned, and again, politics are aligned, and we give each other a call every now and then to see what's going on. So, anyways, Dave, I want to go ahead and let you introduce yourself. He is the owner of F4, and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. First, Gary Summer, thanks for having me. It's been a while since we've done a podcast and a live one, so it should be fun. So I own F4 Defense, a firearms manufacturer. We've been around for probably about 5 years now, manufacturing AR-15s and small frame AR-10s, mostly high end. And recently here, we've gotten into the brokering side of military hardware and moving ammo and a lot of international business and exporting and importing. So we've really branched out from a small company that thought we'd just build a couple AR-15s and, see if we could make a little money. So it's really kind of snowballed since we started. But, just another small business in a very crowded space.
Yeah.
One of the unique things we do though is most people know is the small frame AR-10, which is it's completely different platform than your standard 20-pound, AR-10. It's just, AR-15 sized AR-10. So that's kind of our bread and butter.
Yeah. So I got a couple of there on the wall, but if you will, just explain to everybody, for those that don't know what a small frame is. Honestly, I didn't know what a small frame AR was until you and I met, and you kind of went over the features for me.
Sure. The best way to explain it to people is it's an AR-15 from the magwell back. A lot of AR-15 parts, but in the AR-10 platform. So if you actually put an AR-15 and an AR-10 lower from a top view, it is identical from the magwell back. And it's just the one of the most important aspects, and technically at least, is it's got a much lower bore axis than an AR-10. So it just, your feeding, your reliability. There we go, right there. You really get the sense of it when you put it alongside a standard AR-10. But it's just, it handles and shoots. It's a lot more closely in line with an AR-15 than an AR-10. But the bore axis is low like an AR-15, so you don't get that vertical climb that when a round's stripped out of the magazine, it doesn't have to travel as far up before it chambers. So you don't beat that round up, and it's just, like I said, it handles and shoots like an AR-15. It's light, and they've just over-engineered, or just the AR-10 in general is just completely oversized for what it needs to be. So you get the benefit of having all those AR-10 calibers, but in a smaller package.
Yeah. So folks, when you look at this thing, again, just like you said, everything except for the magwell looks just like an AR-15. And just like you said as well, that bore access, where that bullet is aligned, it's much more in line with the bore itself. So as it's loading, number one, it's not getting so scored up as you see with some of the other larger framed AR-10 platforms. And again, just overall, it's a really cool and unique design. It's definitely a lot lighter. And man, these things have been shooting lights out. We definitely are getting, on this one, I was getting about definitely under an MOA, and on that other one up there with the stainless steel barrel, I was getting like under a third or around a third MOA. So pretty impressive packages overall. And I definitely recommend you guys go check it out. And we'll do some more. I need to do a video. I've been meaning to do a video on those rifles in particular, but just haven't got around to it. But we will, because they're definitely worth talking about.
Some of the biggest changes from a standard 10 to the small frame AR-10 is the carrier is the exact same outside diameter as an AR-15 carrier. I think it's about 5/8 of an inch longer. The bolt is very similar to an AR-10 bolt, but the barrel extension, when you pull an AR-10 apart and you look at that barrel extension, it's just a huge piece of steel, there's a lot of weight to it. So the small frame AR-10 has an AR-15 sized barrel extension. I think it's about maybe 10,000ths of an inch difference, or maybe 15 thou difference. So those are some of the things, just those two things right there really drop the weight. Of course, there's smaller upper receiver, smaller lower receiver, but that barrel extension and BCG change really drives that weight down. So, I mean, every rifle we make in the AR-10 is under 8 pounds, and most of them are high 6s to mid 7s.
Nice. All right, so let's talk about. So we had a few things that we're going to throw out as far as an agenda goes, and then from there we're going to open the floor up to you guys, and you're welcome to, and even any time in between, I'll be going back and forth with comments. So if you have a question of Dave or myself or Noah or Summer, you can throw it up there and we'll hit it. But so first and foremost that I want to talk about is the firearm industry in general, kind of present, future status, and the challenges that we foresee. So again, Dave, I'll kind of open it up to you. In the manufacturing side, what are some of the challenges that you guys are currently, and also some of the positives? What's going on in the industry as it is?
Well, it's an absolute mess, man, like it usually is. With the perfect storm of COVID and a change in administration, and then all the social unrest we had. I mean, the industry went gangbusters, and we all should have been making a fortune. Unfortunately, instant supply chain issues, as it typically is, when we have we have those large spikes, and we'll get into the ammo. I know we had some ammo discussions to take care of, but there's a couple parts that like a small business like us that procures parts, BCGs, charging handles, triggers, from various companies. When those spikes happen, BCGs, they just disappear. I mean, I've yet to figure out, how that happens. I know it's what's driving it is the ramp up in production of rifles, but it's like they just completely disappear off the market. But it's just supply chain issues. I mean, there's companies that have gone out of business, when they should be making more money than they've ever made, and it's just unfortunate. And it's just, you know how the industry is. It's so volatile. It's up, it's down, it's up and down. But this last spike that we saw is the largest that I've seen. Matter of fact, I think it was probably as big or bigger than after the Sandy Hook shooting. I know you remember how bad things were. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I remember gun shows. The guys would go in there and buy 10 bolt carrier groups, for $300-400 a piece. So it was bananas.
Yeah, and I think that the effects of what has happened over the last year or so too is going to have a much longer impact as well. I think when you have these emotional reactions to Sandy Hook and some of the other things that take place, that's one thing. But I think people have changed in general. There's a lot of folks out there that their opinion of firearms have changed, and just people's outlook. It's been generally a paradigm shift in society overall. And I don't, this isn't one of those things where I see a huge spike and then it's going to go crashing back down. I think we're still, the demand is still high, and I think it's going to stay high for a much longer period of time. And of course, the other issue is that the supply chain, I think, is going to stay out of whack for a much longer period of time. We see what's going on, over on the West Coast with all the container ships out there. And that's something that you and I have talked about. Most people don't realize, most of the chemicals for ammunition, primers, and things like that, they're not made here or sourced here in the United States. That stuff is sourced overseas. So we can have all the components and everything else that we want, but if we don't have the chemicals for powder and things like that, we're kind of hurting.
It's tough to touch on your first point with, I don't know how many millions of new gun owners we have. I think a lot of that was driven from the social unrest when they had the rioting, and it was just, it was going crazy. And then, everybody wants to protect their home, protect their family. They go out and buy a gun. They quickly realize that you have to do a background check. I can't just leave with this firearm. In one hand, I'm like, I'd love to see more people come into the 2A community and exercise their Second Amendment right. In the other hand, I'm like, I'm just shaking my head.
Yeah, I don't. Those folks, I think, vast majority of those folks are not people that are going to stay. They consider themselves in the 2A community, even though they have a gun. I hear this argument a lot, like, oh, there's all these new gun owners, and the fight for gun rights is been boosted, and it has to some extent. But again, I think most of those are people that are still very anti-2A, or a lot of them are anti-2A. And just because they went out and bought a gun didn't change their overall political philosophy. So, I don't necessarily buy that argument. And I'm very wary of, these new 2A owners. I think a lot of them, they bought a gun in the heat of the moment, but still believe
Right.
that they can vote away gun rights and therefore gun violence. And that's how they see it.
That wouldn't surprise me. And you know how it is too, out of sight, out of mind. So when the chaos is going on, they rush out, they purchase a firearm, they want to exercise their freedom. And then as things settle back down, as we're in between, explosive events, they tend to, yeah, I agree. They tend to drift back to their, their previous political views on the Second Amendment, which is a shame. One other thing to touch on as well, and no, this is not a plug for Gary's company, but go get training. All these new firearm owners, you're crazy if you don't get at least a basic level of training. It's, I think a lot of us take it for granted. We've been shooting for years and, have a lot of experience, but when you're a new gun owner, swallow your pride, go learn from a professional, to keep from hurting yourself or hurting your family, or, just doing something stupid. But there's not enough folks out there that purchase firearms, and, they'll buy 15 rifles and and Kevlar and, every accessory known to man, and they won't spend a dime on training. It's crazy.
No, it's not just new gun owners. It's the gun owners that have been, have had a gun sit in the closet for 15 years. But in all intents and purposes, their skill level is they're a new gun owner. But again, they've had a gun owner, so by proxy, or just by through osmosis because the gun's been in the closet. You know, they feel over time they've gotten better and better and better, and they're better at gunfighting than they ever were. But no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I was something you said kind of at the beginning of this when you were talking about, and we were both talking about, you know, not necessarily kind of dyed in the wool, freaking, you know, suddenly they're 2A. To me, it's like, you know, these BLM folks, right? If you have a BLM guy or somebody that's very anti-police, if they're getting shot at, beat up, suddenly they want the cops there, right? So the cop comes, saves them. They've stopped from getting their, you know, their asses whooped, right? So they've stopped that, but when they stand up and wipe the blood off, they're still just as anti-cop as they were. They wanted that cop there when they needed them, but they haven't changed the philosophy. So it's along those same lines. So,
it's hypocrisy at its purest form. You know, you see it all the time. You know, when it's peaceful and convenient, you know, they want to defund the police, and then, you know, when they're getting their face kicked in, they want the police to show up. So yeah, you see it it is all over the place. You know, and this whole defund the police thing is mind boggling. You know, I almost wish they would just take like a 72-hour hiatus and just let happen. You know, whatever's going to happen, just let it happen, and just see how peaceful it is, and this oasis that they've created for themselves with no law enforcement. You know, I mean, it's just I just shake my head. I can't even believe it's being discussed, you know, as a serious consideration.
Well, you even see what's going on in Minnesota right now. So, you know, I don't know what the reasons for it are, but, you know, apparently I know Ilhan Omar, she was over there saying how the cops aren't responding and they're not doing their duty. Well, they obviously have a lot less cops there and a whole lot of other issues going on. And I don't know the logistical issues that but suddenly now there is they're complaining about a lack of response from the police in the most virulent anti-police Minneapolis, Minnesota that there is. So, anyways,
I know it's so easy to go from the firearms industry, you know, and branch off into these topics, but they're important to discuss. You know, there's a lot of great police officers that are stepping away from the job because of the current environment, whether it's COVID, you know, whether it's the non-support they have from their leadership. It's really, really unfortunate. And I think that we're going to be feeling that for years to come. You know, I mean, instead of getting more training and more money for training, you know, de-escalation, firearms training, you know, things they can do in the community, you got great cops that are stepping away every day. It's a shit situation, and I don't think it's going to get any better.
No, I agree, and I don't think we're really even starting to see the real ramifications of it, because with all the retirements and people just leaving the industry in general and just leaving law enforcement, you know, there's going to be a shortage for cops, and then on top of that, they've demonized the profession. So not only are they creating an immediate shortage, we're going to see shortages go on throughout. And again, because they're defunding them, there's going to be less money, less incentive to go there. So we're just at the beginning of this. It's going to be a huge issue.
I think now even pushing that decision point more quickly for a lot of cops is the fact that they're enforcing the vaccine mandates. So you got a lot more people
absolutely
walking out faster than they would have.
I saw some statistic that it was like 30 to 40% of some industries in New York City have walked away from the job because of the mandates. I mean, that is just crazy. You know, everything from sanitation to law enforcement to, you know, all first responders. And I mean, it is crazy that they're allowing this to happen. You know, through their implementation of the COVID restrictions and vaccine mandates, it's going to be bad. It's going to get really bad, and it's going to continue to get worse.
Yeah, I think Jamie Lee here's McFadden here. He said it best: an armed socialist, still a socialist. They still believe it, and we might as well just say an armed Democrat, still a Democrat. It is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know the term liberal. You know, I use it myself, but you know, there's not a liberal anything about the Democratic Party anymore. You know, what happened to the party of free speech, and you know, I mean, that's just going right out the window.
I mean,
It's
the term liberal refers to a fascist socialist. That's what it means. I mean, just straight up.
yeah, it's bad. So, but no, back to swing back at the topic at hand, the industry. It's just part of the ebb and flow of how the industry goes. You know, when we have these situations where, I mean, this was a major spike, but you know, it'll come back down a little bit and then it'll spike back up. It's such a volatile industry, a very difficult industry too, to you know, to manage your way through these you know, highs and lows. But it's nothing that we haven't seen before and won't see again, probably sooner rather than later. You know, this last one was significant, but it's bound to happen again. There'll be something that happens that ignites a buying frenzy, but it's just a matter of when.
Well, and again, you know, I just don't know that we're ever going to. I'm not quite convinced, going back to all the things that we just talked about, that we're ever going to completely catch up, or if we do, it's going to be a really long time. There's not going to be a surplus of ammo anywhere for a really long time. There's not going to be a surplus of guns anywhere for a really long time. And I'm talking at least, I think 3 to 5 years at a minimum, if not longer, because just like you said, we still have the demand, but we've had people and manufacturers go out of business and everything else. So it's going to continue to be an issue. And then I think we're going to continue to see violence. We're going to continue to see, like you said, like we talked about already, you know, you're going to continue to see law enforcement. People are going to have to start realizing that they're there to protect themselves, just like they did all through this past year, for sure.
Yeah, you know, and raw materials too. I mean, the scarcity of raw materials and the costs that have gone up. I mean, you saw it in other sectors. I mean, did you see the prices of lumber when this stuff happened? It like tripled. I mean,
Yep.
you know, so you see that too with the firearms industry with a lot of raw materials. It's just, you know, steel has gone through the roof, aluminum has gone through the roof. You touched on ammunition and for the life of me, I can't remember the precursor to gunpowder, but you know, there's very few production facilities that you know that make that base, you know, component for gunpowder, and it's tough. I mean, I saw primers going for $1.50 a primer, you know, a year
Mhm.
ago. I mean, that's just crazy. You know, and it's and I hear rumors and stuff throughout the industry. I did hear a rumor from a credible source that that Remington's manufacturing of ammunition, that they were, you know, in 3 months they were going to be out of primers and we're going to default on some military contracts. So I don't know if I'm spreading, you know, misinformation, but you know, I mean, this stuff, it's going to be waves of this for the next several years.
No, I completely agree. I think we're going to continue to see the reverberations of everything going on here, both politically and from a supply standpoint, for quite a long time to come.
Do you wanna-
What'd you say?
Dave's got a question up there.
All right, Dave. Let's see here. Got a question for Dave. Dave, we love your amber receivers. Do you recommend a lefty make a left AR or shoot a right left?
I get, you know, I get this question a lot, and the demand's just not there. You know, if you could, in a manufacturing situation, if you could just produce a few at, you know, a cost effectively, you know, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when you have to, you know, you have to run a large lot of receivers, the demand's just not there for left-handed shooters. That, and Gary, I know you see this, is left-handed shooters have been shooting right-handed guns forever. You know, and
Yeah.
they've just adapted to shooting a right-handed firearm. And you know, the to touch on the ambi too. I mean, I've got a lot of customers that don't like the ambi features. You know, a lot do, but the guys that have been running a rifle for a long time, now an ambi selector and an ambi charging handle, yes, but you know, throwing in an ambi bolt catch and an ambi mag release, they're gonna run it like they've always run it instead of retraining themselves to run an ambi system. So while the demand's there, for that. It's just not there for left-handed shooters. Now, I mean, you can always buy, you know, for instance, with us, you could buy one of our receivers and then just buy, you know, a left-handed upper and a left-handed BCG, and, and build around it. But I think you just don't see left-handed ARs that often. I know Stag Arms does them quite a bit, but they're the only company I can think off the top of my head that really makes, you know, a large run and a big push for left-handed ARs.
Yeah, and I'll tell you you know, the downside to that left-handed AR is just like you said, is if suddenly you're thrown into a much more common right-handed AR, there's a big performance curve there if you haven't trained with it, and then vice versa. You know, if you know, basically if Summer was left-handed, I'd want her trained up on a right-handed gun so that if we needed to switch guns, we would both be equally as effective. But you know, there again, there's good arguments. At the end of the day, there's just you're just like you said, the juice ain't worth the squeeze when it comes to. You're not going to see a lot of left-handed ARs out there. That's just
no. And again, it comes back to the manufacturing process. You just can't. There's no cost-effective way to produce a small run of left-handed receivers. You know, it would just. It's too costly. It would just drive the cost up by making these very small runs of something that there's really just not the demand for.
Yeah.
Ed, how'd you like the Credo? I don't know if you've got it mounted up on anything yet, but
so Ed just purchased a Trijicon Credo. I mounted that up in some rings this past week. Got that over to him. Summer did most of the work. So I'm glad you like that, Ed.
Taking credit for her work, man. Come on, Gary.
I'm trying to get her trained up so she can start mounting glass for me too, but she apparently she's got all this other stuff she takes care of. Oh, I got so much other stuff to do: cook, clean, take care of kids. A lot of excuses.
counting, shipping.
Dan has a question for you, Danny Unlimited. Wanting one of the F4 receivers for a while. When can we see them in stock for purchase?
So, you know, as we talked about supply issues, you know, we've really felt the pinch. We're not even taking orders right now for small frames until we get this backlog out. But the receivers that we have, they've all been allocated to complete rifles. A lot of them going out for export, believe it or not. And a lot of, you know, dealers and customers that were buying complete rifles in here. So I would say, to answer the question, I'd say probably the first quarter of 22. Maybe the second quarter we'll get those back in stock and start selling components. But it's just been an all-out push to sell complete rifles. And since we've started exporting, we export quite a bit to Europe. That's really eaten up a lot of our inventory as well.
Well, first quarter of 22 is not that far away.
No,
don't tell me that, Summer. That means I got to get to work and find some receivers. No, it's not that far away.
Not at all.
All right, we've already been kind of touching on some of the current and political events as it is. It's kind of hard to stay away from, but I think it's so intertwined with the firearms industry, period, that it really is one and the same almost. That's why, you know, I hear people all the time say, you know, well, you shouldn't be political on your page or this or that, folks. I just don't see any way to get around it. You know, it is what it is. And you know, I know, especially for those of you that have seen my posts, I've been a little bit more abrasive probably on Twitter lately than other ones. But, you know, in my opinion, there's just no, number one, we're going to be us, right? So we're going to, there's things that I believe in. Those feelings and those beliefs politically are what drove me to serve my country. And I'm going to continue to say those beliefs. You know, at the end of the day, those aren't meant to necessarily offend anybody. And if you are offended, we're probably not of the same tribe anyhow. You're probably not buying anything from us. And I'm not here to you know, push people away, but I'm also not here to be politically correct or to tiptoe around certain topics and just to appease potential customers, right? I don't have a problem if you have a completely different political point of view than me. I don't have a problem with us being friends or anything else, but it doesn't seem to go the other way. So that's kind of where I stand on politics. And again, it's just so intertwined with our business to begin with. But yeah. So what else do you think, Dave?
Two points. One, it's so important for platforms like this to get the message out, because the mainstream media, you don't get the pulse of what's really going on in the country. It doesn't represent what the people across America, from middle America to the east to the west coast, the views. It's just whatever agenda they're pushing. So it's extremely important for platforms like this to be able to talk about these things and not get shut down or censored. And number two, if people don't want to hear it, it's their prerogative. Perfectly fine. Just turn it off. No one's holding you down and making you listen to this. So if they do and they have different views, just look at it objectively, and I'd love to have a conversation that's not emotionally charged with somebody that has different views than I do. But that's a tough one to find these days. You have one side, that gets their views out there, and the other side is all emotion. And it's hard. It's really hard to have a conversation like that.
I definitely think in this current environment, the last few years, conservatives have definitely become a lot more emotionally resilient in society, as opposed to, liberals. They see their points of view being touted all throughout media. They tend to, surround themselves in an echo chamber, and they just have a hard time understanding or relating with anyone that believes differently. And of course, the other issue with that is that clearly you have to have some sort of racist agenda if you believe philosophically or politically different than another person. And that gets tired and worn out. And I'll tell you, that's 100% why we saw what happened in Virginia take place. People are sick and tired. There's lots of Democrats that turned Republican, or at least voted Republican, right, because of the school issue. They have all these Democrat, or at least center left parents out there that realize what's being taught in these schools and the things that are going on in these schools, whether it's the mask mandates, whether it's all the different COVID restriction going on, never mind CRT or whether or not that's taught in schools. And, we can talk about that. But the fact of the matter is that there are parents with real concerns that are even on the left. And when the left is also telling them that they're only concerned about that because they're racist or have some sort of, bias, it's infuriating, and it's insulting, to say the least.
You're right. And you see it like we just saw in Virginia with the governor's race. I mean, it's, if we have a fair election, then, the votes will speak for themselves. I wish there were mainstream platforms where we could get an objective view, or, I mean, where can you go now to get the news? Just the news.
Well,
it doesn't exist.
It does. Even if it does, people won't let it exist. And what I mean by that is, for instance, anything objective is going to be immediately painted as right wing. I see like, Fox News is a great example of this. Obviously there's clearly some clear right-wing folks on Fox News, right? So, and they have them in a lot of different editorial, whether it's Sean Hannity or these opinion shows. But there's also some very down the center, and I don't know what their political views are. And some of them, I tend to think that they're probably not conservative, but those people get lambasted no matter what. And when they say something that clearly is, to me, is very objective, very center line, they're still lambasted as extreme right wing. So I think the truth, if there isn't a left spin, it's going to be painted, and demagoguery is going to take place to where they're going to try to take the credibility of that, because they don't want an objective voice out there. They don't.
No. If there has to be something to be angry at, or there has to be some injustice to be focused on, because if not, then people are going to focus on actual policies, and we know how destructive some policies are, whether it's economic, whether it's security, it's that was that was where I think Trump really misstepped. Is he was so combative at times that it was, his policies were overlooked, and he had some really, really good policies, some really strong policies, especially in economics, and it just got completely, glassed over because it was just so much chaos. And that's a shame, because there was some fantastic policies that he pushed, and wasn't perfect at all. He had some that I certainly didn't agree with, but there was a lot of strong policy making in his 4 years, and you just don't even hear about it.
No, I mean, you can look at what the collapse of the border that we see right now. That's just one of many. I think economically, we were doing really great, but you're right. He would get so wrapped up in very petty and kind of personal issues, as opposed to, and almost all of those issues, I was always a little bit torn too, because I like the fact that he's fighting back and he's not just going to take it like we've seen conservatives in the past. But here's the thing. I don't think, whether it's Trump, whether it's DeSantis, a lot of us that are listening to this, a lot of conservatives out there are sitting, are saying to themselves, I wish Trump, they're saying, I wish Trump would be a little bit, I don't know, more politically correct, or whatever, diplomatic, whatever you want to say it. But the reality is it doesn't matter. You can get somebody like DeSantis, who's up. I don't know if you guys have ever heard him speak. I mean, he's a very eloquent speaker, very down the road, but they just hate them for their policies. They're going to demonize them no matter what. And they're going to turn everybody into Trump. So it's not just Trump.
Wow.
Trump.
No, no.
I will say, I think Trump's personality is so polarizing. I mean, speaking on election day
Sure.
to a woman at the gym that I, interact with frequently, and she's like, "Well, I voted for Biden because I don't like the way Trump acts." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not going on a date with the guy. I'm voting for policy and how this person's going to run my country, not whether or not I like his personality." But I think the personality was just, like you said, probably part of his downfall, because he was so polarizing. And like DeSantis, I mean, they've already demonized. They told the man that his wife deserved cancer.
Yeah.
Because he's a conservative.
There's some cruel things that are said. I mean, it's bad.
And that's when you have the power of the media. You can take any. I don't care if Trump was a super nice guy, or you take DeSantis or anybody else. They're going to spend a year on them, and after that year, everybody's going to think they're assholes. You know what I mean? They're going to magnify every little thing. And again, don't get me wrong, Trump gave them plenty of ammunition, but
yes, he did.
It's not going to be any better. Even if you get somebody else up there, if you had Mike Pence up there, they would tear him apart. He's going to be the nicest, kindest guy ever, and talk to everybody with respect. But they're going to turn him into the craziest religious loon. They're going to tear those people down no matter what. And conservatives just got to be able to stand up to that. And right now, I don't see a lot of folks. People fall victim to that too easily, in my opinion.
Well, how do you think that the messaging could have been improved to be more policy focused? Because I've asked folks that that vote Democrat, or that just hate Trump with a passion. I'm like, well, what do you hate about him as far as his policies? Not because he gets up there and he says this or says that, or he attacks this person or that person, but what policy of his do you hate, or what policy of his is racist? Right. or is keeping people down, and it's a you get a look like you got three heads.
They don't know the policies, or they start spouting about some sort of hyperbolic version of the policies. Usually they're going to go back to something like, well, they said all Mexicans are racist, or are rapists and criminals, and this, and obviously that's not what was said. So it's just a complete distortion of any sort of truth, and that's just what's going to happen with it, without a doubt.
It is, and it's you're right. I don't know how to. I'm glad I'm not in charge, and I need to fix it. It's just it gets uglier and uglier. Every election cycle it just gets worse. So it'll be tough. It'll be really tough, because the other side, they don't talk about their policies either, for good reason.
Yeah, just talk about what free money they're going to give.
I mean, they talk about
right.
This pie in the sky nonsense. They're selling a utopia constantly, and they're just going to take from all the rich folks and give to the poor. And you know, it's crazy that's literally. I wish I could throw up one of Ilhan Omar's tweets I saw earlier, but she was like, literally, hey folks, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to do it all by taxing the rich. That was literally her quote. And it's like, no, you're not. I mean, even when you look at the last stimulus that I guarantee you, nobody feels any better after we spent that stimulus of all the shovel-ready jobs that we had during the Obama administration. Nobody felt that. Nobody got anything better out of that.
No.
And we're going to spend $3.5 trillion. Most of that money is going to go to overseas or go into rich people's pockets to begin with. And nobody's life's going to improve. And all we're going to see is inflation go up and our money is worth less than it is now.
If people read what goes into those stimulus packages or where that money actually goes, they would throw up. You know, I mean, if it is, you know, how does an economic stimulus for this country include money going overseas?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's economics 101. It just doesn't work.
No, this is a great question right here. And this is something I think about a lot. You know, do we think we're going to be able to stay one country? I don't know. I don't know. You know, I definitely a couple of months ago, I was 100% convinced that at some point in time, we would see a civil war in my lifetime. I hope that's not true. I hope that's not the case. I hope some things dramatically change, but I don't see things getting better, right? I continue to see a polarizing effect on both sides of the dial. We're getting farther and farther apart, and not only farther and farther apart from a political standpoint, just from a real animus. Like I have a real animus towards some of these folks, and I know they feel the exact same way because I feel like they're trying to destroy my country, and a lot of times these people feel like enemies. And you know, it's a shame because they're fellow Americans.
Reminds me of that movie.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I don't know if we would ever get to the point of a civil war. I certainly hope not. I do think that it's a very real possibility in my lifetime that we see a secession, the splitting of the country. I don't know how that would look like, but I think that's a very real possibility over the next couple of decades.
Yeah, you know, they have this on the Maryland. There's a couple of counties trying to secede from Maryland over to West Virginia. I don't blame them. I don't think it's going to happen.
Without Maryland, let it go.
Maryland's not going to let that happen.
No, that's wishful thinking. I think Northern California has been trying to get away from California for quite some time as well. You know, they've actually even made some traction, you know, in the actual process of secession. You know, I mean, I don't think that'll happen either. But if it keeps getting as, you know, divisive as it has been, and it keeps getting worse, there's something's going to break, something's going to give somewhere, you know, and you hope it's not violent. But then again, the coasts, especially the East Coast and the West Coast, and some of these, you know, Democratic controlled states, they can't survive without the conservative states. No. You know, they can't balance a budget. They're bankrupt. You know, they depend on the federal dollar. You know, they would go, you know, they're not energy independent like a Texas would be. So they'll never allow it, you know, or at least not without a vicious fight, because they'll turn into a third world shithole overnight.
No, I completely agree. And let's see. Bush had eggs thrown at his limo. Lots of people hated him.
Follow up to that comment.
Why don't you run the questions? But yeah, so you know, again, I don't think we're going to find anybody that believes like we do that's going to be palatable to the left. You know, it's just not going to happen. And again, I don't disagree that Trump's personality probably magnified the divide to some extent, or at least gave them additional ammunition. But I'm telling you, after 4 years, they're going to vilify anybody that gets in that house, and they're going to feel just as strongly against him as they do, whoever goes in there. If they have any sort of spine. Now, if you get somebody like a Lindsey Graham in there, yeah, the left's going to love them, or get somebody like that. But anybody that's actually willing to fight and has a spine, they're gonna completely destroy them.
It'll be a witch hunt and an distraction for the 4 years, just like it was with Trump.
100%.
Do you think though that it's everyone sees what the mass media portrays? Maybe this is wishful thinking. Maybe it's not nearly as bad as what they're putting out there, because what they're putting out there is BS. So maybe the country isn't as divided as we think. At least not in some areas. I hope that's the case.
I think that again, the media is really good, and the left in general, the Democrats in general, are really good at saying lies often enough to where people start to believe it. It becomes a truth. I still don't believe that Donald Trump has said or done anything that, to me, that's openly racist, but it's just a fact that the guy's racist. It's just a fact that the guy said that only rapists and murderers are coming across the border. That's not what he said. But they've repeated these things to the point where people believe it. And I do think that people are living on sound bites. And I used to think the same way. Like, they're not buying this. More people buy it than I think.
That's a strategy. That it is certainly a strategy by them to just repeat, and then people pick up and say, maybe there's a kernel of truth to this, because I hear it all the time, and that's scary. It becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. One thing I know, we have this in the list, but I've been dying to get your take on the Afghan withdrawal. I don't know if that topic is up yet, but that was one of the things that it seems like it's only been a couple months and it's already been brushed over.
Yeah, no, they've tried to put as much distance between them and that as possible. And honestly, I think that had another impact on the elections in Virginia. We have a lot of military folks in Virginia, and I would think that even most reasonably minded, not people that are just completely, ideologues, can say, that was a failure. There's no way of getting around that. That's a failure.
And they brought a lot of the Afghan refugees into Virginia, and they're still in Virginia.
There's thousands of them at Fort Pickett right now.
Yeah. So.
They were quick to blame this on Trump's withdrawal plan, but if from what I saw when I looked into it, is there was 10 or 12 steps that had to be, or conditions that had to be met in order for the withdrawal to take place before the end of calendar year 21, and most of them were not, and they just pulled them out anyway.
Yeah, those were all condition based, and it had nothing to do with Trump's withdrawal plan. So Biden can just stop lying. It's nonsense. It's a shame. It's frustrating. As somebody that spent some time there, I don't think we should have.
Let's just be real. You were pissed.
No, I was beyond pissed. At the end of the day, I think this is the thing that Americans have to realize. If we're going to go to war, part of that is a permanent. You better just expect that we're going to be there permanently to some extent, because that's the only way that we're going to create stability. I don't like the idea of going to Afghanistan and keeping people there all the time. But folks, if you support a war, just know that we are there 24/7. And the only wars that we ever won, we can look back, Japan. All right, we're still there. And guess what? Now we're friends. We have a nice stable area. Germany, guess what? We're still there. We got military bases there. We created stability right then and there. In Japan and Germans, they were crazier than any Afghans or any Iraqis or any other jihadists ever were. That they were much more dedicated than these folks. We had the will to beat them. And then we were like, hey, you know what? We're staying here, and this is ours now. This is a strategic area for us to maintain control. And
you're right. You're right. World War II was, we've got a permanent presence in Europe, in Japan. That's a part of it. War should be an absolute, last resort. But it changes. The politicians don't have the stomach for it. To fight war the way it's supposed to be fought. That's why it should be a last resort. But it's just, you can't just go over there, expect the people of these countries to automatically, incorporate our views and our structure of government, and then just take off and leave them to their, to their own vices. It just doesn't work. I mean, two decades of war, and look what is left in these two countries.
Well, what's left is billions of our money and our blood and treasure and everything else. And that's the thing, is like, it is, again, not only did we just pull out of there, we gave up a very strategic location. And again, it was just like when we were pulling out of Iraq, we saw the light, we had to go back. There are worse things than freaking being there. And I think we're going to end up back there again. We've lost the initiative, right? We've lost the tactical advantage. We had a strategic and tactical advantage, and we've lost that now, because I almost guarantee you we're going to be back. And if we don't, maybe that's the decision they make, but it doesn't mean that it can be a lot worse.
And if we go back, I mean, I could be completely wrong because I haven't been there and I don't know how this stuff works. You have first knowledge, but if we go back, are we going to have the same support from the citizens? Because we've now abandoned them. We've left them there to die and be hunted down by the terrorists. So when Americans go back, they're not going to be so willing to help us out.
And it's not just them. If we go back, anybody that we ever have a conflict with in the future, all they're going to do is look back at us, and no one is going to help us. You know who they're going to help? They're going to help the Russians. They're going to help the Chinese. Because guess what? They filled the void. They stayed there. They stayed on the wings, just waiting for us to leave. And man, they swooped in, and now they're making money. They're over there building them up. They're over there building strategic alliances. And here we are. Just it's embarrassing.
Summers couldn't be more right about this one. Wars fought now. They're coalitions. So you're 100% right. They're going to look back at this and be like, why would we?
I'd be like, there's no way I'm helping you now. You left me here to die. You left my family here to die, and there's no way I would help you again.
You're right. It's going to be very hard in the future to build that coalition like we have in the past. But yeah, a permanent presence, and it's just, I've got opinions too about even going to Iraq in the first place. For as nasty as Saddam was, it was a lot more stable with him in power than it is now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we can look back, and I think there's no doubt that I'm still struggling with the reason behind it. But because you can say we got sold a bill of goods. I just quite haven't figured out what the strategy was behind it, because we didn't get the oil. We didn't get all these things that people, claim that Bush and Cheney and all these things wanted. So what was the point? There was definitely, we were lied to, right? We shouldn't have, if we were going to do anything in Afghanistan, we should have went in special operations. That was a special operations job all day long. We go in with a few small teams. We do what we need to do. We get the heck out of there. Iraq was a joke. We should have never been there to begin with. It was definitely a much more stable region than it is now. And who knows? By this time, maybe Saddam would have been our ally at this point. I don't know.
I mean, Saddam, is as horrible of a dictator that he is. In that country, people had jobs, they had food, there was relative stability. And now what is it? A giant insurgency, in a rotating government, a rotating corrupt government. Not that he was not corrupt, but you saw the same thing in Libya with Gaddafi. You snatch him out, and what do you get? These dictators they're not good people, but they're the best for the situation that those people are in. Because I can guarantee you ask every one of them, and they would rather have Saddam back than what they have now.
No, 100%. And you had Iraq, where you had Sunni, Shia living together, no problem. Christians were there, no problem. We went into, I remember with the initial push into Baghdad, we were surrounded by Christians coming up to our convoys and, letting us know they were Christian. I mean, there was thousands of them. And I guarantee you, and there was churches everywhere. You don't see any of that stuff. Those have been long burned down, and Christians have been hunted to extinction in all throughout Iraq and definitely in the Baghdad area. So, there was definitely stability. He definitely, and here's the thing is, like, I don't even know what was true. We say, well, yeah, he did all this stuff. I don't even know if any of that stuff was true. I think a lot of that is such misinformation and stuff that our own intelligence community tells us and lies to us to convince us to stay on some sort of war footing. So we're always getting ready to go in there. When you talk about Syria, I know some folks that are from Syria, and they talk about not Gaddafi. Who's the guy from Syria? Anyway, the leader of Syria, and I'll tell you,
Assad.
They when I talk to them, they're like, Assad was great. He did. They don't believe that. I don't believe either that he used chemical weapons on there. I think that was a complete CIA job, by the way. But again, I think a lot of this stuff is misinformation, and I think a lot of it's propaganda to keep us to justify their actions, whatever they want to do. And again, I don't even know what their motives are all the time.
I agree, and unfortunately, in the 24/7 news cycle, it's people just forget. And 3 days later, there's another, something going on, and it gets overlooked and left in the rearview mirror, unfortunately, and no one gets held accountable.
No, you're 100%, 100%.
Not to mention
all. Throw up the call.
Not to
questions.
Not to mention all the military hardware we left in Afghanistan.
Oh my gosh.
If I could get 24 hours over there and collect, I mean, it's wow. I mean, I know that happens every time there's a conflict or a war, but the amount of technology that was left over there, M4s is one thing, but there was UAVs. I mean, Black Hawks. I mean, you're talking about major military hardware that just left over there that I can guarantee you was instantly sold to the Chinese or the Iranians.
So part of the government program that I currently work for, we had we had several programs going on over there, obviously, and some of the guys literally just yesterday when I was at work, they were talking about all the billions of dollars of just radar arrays that they left behind, and they tried to destroy some of them. But they were talking about how they left in that one area, just I think it was in Kabul there. They had like 7 of them, and they were like 2.2 million each. But those are just high dollar items. It's just the tens of thousands of much cheaper. Again, the firearms, the night vision, body armor, the MRAPs, armored vehicles, aircraft. I mean, we left a couple of states worth of equipment.
Right. Right. You could have allowed, some civilian groups or defense companies to go over there on their own dime and collect everything, and it would have been gone in 48 hours.
It just frustrates me too when they talk about, well, especially when Biden gets up there and talks about, what do you want us to do? Like literally a private in the Army could have planned that exfil much better. Again, make sure that we have enough forces to provide our own security. We have a controlled exfil out of there, and it's not that difficult. It's literally one of the simplest military operations that have ever taken place, and we bungled it like a bunch of buffoons. It's embarrassing.
Almost like we did it on purpose to distract from something else. I got a good friend of mine was over there on contract to pull out VIPs, and he said every time they spun up and they were about to go outside the wire, the State Department stood them down. every single time. You know, they had the location of individuals. They were going to go scoop them up, and they were stood down every time at the last minute. So they weren't even allowing the contractors they sent over there to go outside the wire and bring people back to the airport. You know, it's yeah. This one's going to hurt for quite some time. It really is a shame.
100%. Let's see. COVID restrictions, current and future. I don't even know if I want to talk about COVID. I'm so sick of it.
What's COVID? This is where we get our vaccination shots out and give them to ourselves live on YouTube. Our boosters.
I did receive a really cool or informative video that I need to post on the socials. I'll get around to doing that. I think most people will find it interesting, to say the least. Anyways, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to talk about COVID. What else?
Skip
what else
it. It'll be there.
What else we got going on?
It'll be there. We can get it.
Let's see if we got any questions over here in the comments. Any questions for Dave? I think this one's for you, Dave. He said the Taliban's laughing at you.
They're laughing at all of us.
100%. Yeah, no, 100%. You know, we've lost the will to fight wars. You know, we beat the Japanese and we beat the Germans because we killed the crap out of them, right? Until we took the fight out of them. You can't do diplomacy and fight wars at the same time, and that's what we did all throughout Iraq and Afghanistan. I'll never forget as a young, I was at E3, E4 with the initial push into Iraq, but we were there about, I don't know, it was like 2 months. I'm sure everybody remembers when Bush flew into the aircraft carrier and said mission accomplished, right? Well, we're still in the middle of a war there that's going on with that. And I'm not going to get into politics of what Bush was trying to do, but how that was interpreted by the military. We had gotten into a firefight earlier in the day, and we were securing this gas station for fuel. And a sergeant major comes up to me, our brigade sergeant major comes up to me, and he's like, "Hey, soldier, what status is your weapon?" I'm like, "What status? I'm in a war zone. It's hot, red or whatever the status we were going with at the time." And he's like, you didn't hear? The war's over. The war's over. I'm like, you need to tell somebody because they were trying to kill us this morning.
Is that why you were?
Yeah, he had to clear us out. He had us clear out the weapons and put our magazines away. And of course, after he left, luckily we had a decent platoon sergeant that had us load back up. But that was the mindset all throughout it. I mean, that really does encapsulate those two conflicts without a doubt, Afghanistan and Iraq.
No, I mean, unfortunately, we haven't won a war since World War II.
Who's your barber?
He's got to be asking you with that salad on top of your head, Gary.
Freaking hair is amazing.
Oh man,
it's coming, Mike. It's coming. Working out some final details. We will definitely get that.
John, are you drinking tonight?
Get that going. Let's see. It's very similar to Vietnam. Fauci and his boosters can kiss my ass. Agreed. I will not be getting any boosters, that's for sure. I did get the Johnson & Johnson early on back in April. Yeah, I'm not getting any boosters.
I got the Moderna shot because I had to do some travel to Jordan, and I had a, working for the government, I had to get permission from CENTCOM, even though it was on personal leave for F4, and so I went and got the Moderna shot. But that's the last one I'm going to get.
Yeah, they can keep their boosters.
Yep.
All right. So one of the things that I would talk to you guys about, or at least talk about as far as the schedule, I think in January, we're going to make sure that we have some med courses up. So if you guys are...
January, February.
What's that?
January, February time.
January, February, we'll definitely get some med courses up there. We try to fill up those colder months. For some reason, nobody wants to come shoot in the cold. I don't know why, but those courses tend to not fill up.
Frozen burns.
That's another thing. So we will definitely get some med courses going.
How many years in a row, Gary, have I told you I'm coming to that med course?
At least 3.
This is the year.
2022 is your
2022
year.
is your year. I like it. I like it. Well, folks, we covered a lot tonight. That was anybody got any alibis? Anything else that they like to ask us? Ask Dave about firearms manufacturing. Like I said, you can definitely expect to see. I need to do some videos on some of his rifles. They're pretty amazing. John, I'm glad you made it to the med course. I'm sorry that sorry I wasn't there and didn't get to meet you.
Yeah, I came all the way from New York just to meet you, and you weren't even there.
You were better off, right, than her. I guarantee it. Yeah, so I just finished a video today. Finished editing, sort of. I came back from Jordan, and there was an update on my editing software, and I can edit everything just fine. But then when I render it and actually produce the video, it comes out all blown out and overexposed. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with that. I've been messing with that all day long today. So anyways, we got some more videos coming out for sure. I think you guys will like the newest video that we just did. Again, I'm always looking for additional video suggestions, so keep those coming. It's easy to take things for granted. I'll just tell you. So the video I'm putting out tomorrow is, or plan out to put out tomorrow, is on magazines. It's just one of those things that I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago, and that's where I got the idea from. This things that I know I take for granted, and a lot of you that are into training take for granted that the average Joe obviously just doesn't know. And just like we talked about, there are some folks out there that are just now getting into guns and firearms, and it's easy to talk about all the whiz bang stuff, but it's the small things and the things that are easy to overlook that end up being the most important.
Fundamentals.
Yep. Even from a mechanical standpoint, something as simple as oh, see, he wants to know who your barber is, Dave.
I've actually been my own barber for about 35 years. So
you did that?
Yeah. It's pretty easy when it's all one length.
Yeah. John, I'm always I appreciate that. I may end up taking you up on that. I need to reach out to ARC and I want to see if they'll send me one first. There's almost nothing I hate being responsible for somebody else's stuff, especially if I'm doing a review or something like that. My luck, it'll get broken, and seriously, it's just one of those things that my luck will get it broken, and if it does get broken, I'm gonna replace it. There's no, I know, I've had clients send me stuff, not that it was ever broken. They're like, if it gets broken or something gets damaged, don't worry about it. Oh, you're crazy. Of course, I'm gonna replace it.
You mentioned that Trijicon Credo.
Yeah.
That's their new offering from Trijicon, isn't it? A relatively new.
Well, it's rebranded, so it was their AccuPower.
Yeah.
They had the AccuPower 1-8. It's the exact same. It's not the exact. There's a couple of new. It's essentially the same thing, same scope body, same everything else. The only difference was the AccuPower that I know of. That the only difference is the AccuPower used to come in red or green reticle, and the new Credo comes with red and green reticle. But everything else is the same. Man, they're just a lot of scope for the money. I'd put them up against, like the new Razor HDs 2s. I think they are 1 to 10, and I think they're close to $2,000. And I think that AccuPower is 95% of that scope. So,
Credo.
What's that?
Credo.
Whatever, Credo. Don't ever correct me in front of the. I'm on a podcast.
You know, if you're gonna spend $2,000 and you don't get a Night Force NX8, you're making a mistake.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's funny you mentioned that a guy had sent me some text, basically asking my opinion of whether or not he wanted to trade his Night Force NX8 1-8 for a Credo, and at the end of the day, I think the Credo is a better optic. It's a 34 millimeter tube versus a 30 millimeter tube. I like the reticle in it better.
Oh, Gary, you shut your mouth. You shut your mouth talking about Night Force like that. No,
okay, I understand. We all love our stuff, our name brand. No, I mean but at the end of the day, it's a $2,000 scope versus a $1,300 scope. Even if it is better, the value of it is something,
Absolutely.
If I have a I don't know, a freaking Corvette that can do 200 miles an hour and it outperforms the $400,000 Ferrari, guess what? Ferrari is still worth $400,000. So, it is what it is.
Yeah, I've said you said it was the AccuPower, that it was the rebranding of the AccuPower.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good optic. Trijicon makes good optics. There's no doubt. I get Night Force at a fantastic price and have for years. So I've kind of shifted in that direction.
No, I love all things Night Force. We try to become a dealer for Night Force, but you got to have a shop. So I was like, well, it is what it is. One of these days, we'll have a shop.
Well, a storefront.
Storefront.
We have a shop.
Oh, we have a shop. You're right. We got to have a storefront. We got to have an actual storefront. Trust me, there's a shop right back here. One of these days, I'll turn the camera around for you guys to see.
Let me clean it.
All the craziness going on.
Yeah.
What else? Any other last minute things? Overall, folks, I really appreciate it. We had 20 people here. I think it was the most we hit was 22 at one point, which is the most we've ever had. So I appreciate everybody coming out. We'll continue to do this. I really enjoy these. We're going to start uploading these. I'll probably download it and edit it and then upload it as a podcast as well. But we'll probably do some more like pure podcast. I don't know. This was good. We're going to continue to do this as well as some other discussions and things like this, whether it's a podcast.
Gary, every podcast or this live stuff or platforms like this, you got to grind it out in the beginning, man. They all start off small, but the folks that stick with it and it's topics like this and they want to hear your views, it'll be really big before you know it. You just got to stay the course.
Yeah, I mean, there was even a comment earlier, we need more real citizens talking like this instead of the fake news, basically. So I agree. People want to hear this stuff. They want to have a discussion.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks, Tom. On the that is the Secure It gun walls. We're gonna do some videos on one of those pretty soon. I think we're gonna. Oh, we got some other stuff going on with that too. Which, by the way, we had that big giveaway going on. That ended today. We're going to be doing the announcement with Secure It and Stag on Monday. So don't miss that. We're actually going to be doing it, I believe, at 7:45 on Monday. So we'll do that live as well. So somebody will, well, a couple of people, four people will be winning some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And you get to see Gary's face again.
Oh, God. Thank you, Summer, and the guys. Yeah.
Thank you, Summer. These guys you bring. You're welcome, John.
Let's see here. Who will be the next Mike? Choke yourself. I choke myself every night. Thanks, Willie. All right, folks. I think we're going to go ahead and shut this down. But Dave, we really appreciate you coming out. Thanks for taking the time to do this. We'll definitely do this. I'll have you on pretty regularly. These are good talks. And again, I think, we've enjoyed this. And hopefully we're getting a little bit better at it. Definitely doesn't feel quite as awkward as it did the first few times. And hopefully we'll just get more comfortable and have a little bit more fun with these things. So we've had the amount of technical issues. So that's been good as well. Running water is they still think that's an Indian here in West Virginia. So getting internet is just a plus anytime that we can. But it is what it is. So been good.
No.
Dave, again, I really appreciate having you out. Definitely go check out F4 Defense, folks. Doesn't sound like Dave has a lot in stock right now, but he will eventually. And I'm telling you, you should definitely get one of his guns. Another veteran-owned, American-made products. Their guns, I'm telling you, folks, are just superb as far as the fit and finish on them, the unique design. There's just a lot of really cool detail stuff that goes into those, and definitely worth checking out.
Gary, Summer, thank you. I haven't seen you guys in a couple of years, I don't think in person, so it'll be good to get up there again soon. But no, thanks for having me on. I'd love to do this. When you have an open slot. I think the biggest thing I struggle with is staying on topic. You go down these rabbit holes, but I really think that that people want to hear it, just like a conversation would take place. And I love the interaction too with folks asking questions. You guys are doing a great job.
Yeah,
I'd love to be back.
Thank you.
Our opinions aren't, in isolation, right? There's a lot of other folks out there that believe the same things that we do. Probably a majority of folks out there that believe the same things we do. But again, we just don't realize it because we're up against the media giants. There's no doubt about it. Anyways, Dave, thanks again, man. We always got a guest room here. If you're coming through, make sure you stop by. We'll definitely get you out, do some training this year. But we appreciate it, folks. Stay armed, stay ready, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care.